QuickBooks Online 2025. Comprehensive Problem Introduction and Resources. Get ready and some coffee because we're learning how to save time with QuickBooks Online 2025. We are now embarking on a detailed comprehensive problem where we set up our QuickBooks Online software, creating our company file, laying down the foundation in a similar way as a city might lay down the infrastructure on which they can then build the infrastructure or foundation of our QuickBooks file, being things such as the general ledger accounts, the products and services, any prior balances from a prior accounting system we have to pull into our current accounting system. Once the foundation, the infrastructure is laid, we start building on it, remembering the thing that we are trying to build are our financial statements and related reports, balance sheet and income statement, which we can then construct by entering transactions with the help and use of forms, those being invoice forms, bill forms, check forms, and so on and so forth. We will be entering forms as though we're mirroring ourselves in a business that sells guitars, in our case, having then to deal with inventory, as well as having some service items such as guitar lessons, so we can get a broad scope of different types of businesses and industries. We'll enter transactions for 2 months of data input. At the end of those, we will then be practicing on bank reconciliations. We'll then take a look at the budgeting process. And as we do each step along the way, we will be analyzing the impact on the financial statement and related reports, that being the balance sheet and the income statement. Noting that we will also be touching on every step along the way how the bank feeds might impact these transactions. However, we're first going to enter the transactions without the bank feeds so we understand the accounting system. Then we're going to have a whole nother course or section focusing in on bank feeds themselves. So given that, we first need to think about the resources that we can use for this kind of problem, noting that QuickBooks is a little bit difficult in some ways compared to prior accounting systems, such as a desktop accounting system. Back when we were using a desktop accounting system, we were able to use things like backup files. And if we could restore backup files, it would be easier for every step along our process to give you a backup file so that you can start at any point within the practice problem. When we look at the QuickBooks Online, however, we can't really utilize the backups in that way, in that fashion, to help us with our instruction purposes. And therefore, the best way to go through the process is from start to finish, just following through the whole process. However, it's a long process, and oftentimes you might want to be going back to certain items within a practice problem. And for that, then you might want to be using the test drive file just so you can practice a certain thing that is happening to be demonstrated within the practice problem. So let's look at the resources that are available to us and how that can fit into how we might utilize this practice problem. We've got the free 30-day trial. Now, that's the thing that we're going to imagine that we might be setting up in order to go through the practice problem, remembering that QuickBooks usually will offer a free 30-day trial, and you would imagine the idea within QuickBooks' mind, Intuit's mind, the business that owns QuickBooks being Intuit, is that you're going to enter your data into the system, and after 30 days, you're going to see how wonderful the software is, and you will already have your data locked into the system and won't want to change it, and then you'll start paying for the software after that point in time. What we really want to have here is a sandbox that doesn't have anything in it. We want a fresh file. Now, you might already have access to QuickBooks with your business file. We don't want to be testing or practicing data input with your business file because you don't want to enter data that isn't related to your business within the business file. So ideally, we would like to have another company file, possibly with the help and use of a free 30-day trial, in order for us to just practice the QuickBooks system. Now, there's also a test drive that you can use for that practice system, but the test drive already has data in it. So the difference here between the 30-day trial and the test drive is that if you're practicing something that is not part of the setup process, where their data is already in the system, the test drive can be a great tool. But if we're practicing setting up the company file from scratch and entering the original chart of accounts, for example, and the products and service and whatnot for a new business, then we need a company file that doesn't have anything in it. And that's what we're practicing from this point. So that means if you're going through this practice problem, for the first part of the practice problem, at the very least, you really want to have like a system that doesn't have anything in it so that you can follow along with it. Once you get to the middle of the practice problem, you might be able to use the test drive, noting that the data will not be the same in our file versus your file, but you can still practice things like entering an invoice and so on and so forth within the test drive file. Now, we also want to point out that this is going to be a very long and detailed problem because we're going to go through 2 months of data input as well as the setup process, and then we'll go into bank recs after that and so on and so forth. That means that if you were only having 30 days to do all of that work, we're going to cover a lot of ground. So you're going to want to make sure that if you want to get through the whole practice problem and you only have 30 days, you're mapping out the time so that you can go through it within that 30 days without having to pay for the software, and then hopefully pay for the software when you're going to utilize it for your actual business or with your bookkeeping clients is going to be the general idea. Now, there might also be a student version of the software, Intuit, the owner of QuickBooks, possibly providing the software to students, but that's going to be specific to whether you qualify as a student for QuickBooks to give you that software. That would be great because most classes of QuickBooks last more than 30 days. So hopefully in that case, you can get access to the software for something like 60 days or something like that, maybe 90 days, which would be great because then you'd have a sufficient amount of time possibly to get through all of the material within the practice problem and basically do it in order. Once you've done it in order or have gone through the practice problem, you can still use these resources and go back to certain items to see how to do things and possibly follow along with the test drive, which already has data in it, but it's just not going to mirror our data in our practice problem. The only way to really do that is to actually work the practice problem from start to finish, which is something you won't find in a lot of areas. Because it takes a long, comprehensive problem to basically set that up. All right, and then of course you can look for discounts. So when you start to buy the software, you might talk to your CPA firm or your accountant or your bookkeeper and see if they have any discounts to best, buy the software. So remember, you got the free 30-day trial as an option. You got the free student version, possibly if you qualify as a student. You've got the free test drive, which is available to everybody. And then we've got discounts that you might go to a QuickBooks distributor or your accountant to ask about. Noting that if you're using the 30-day trial to practice with, then usually you have to make sure that this is toggled to the right. Now, if you already have a QuickBooks file, maybe you could still get a free 30-day trial because QuickBooks Online is sold by company. So you're going to set up a new company file because the point is that you want to start with nothing in the company file and have a sandbox that doesn't have anything in it so that you can use it to practice. Now, it's going to scare you when you go to the 30-day trial here because it's going to change the prices down below and increase the prices. So when you actually buy the software, you don't typically want to do a 30-day trial because then after the 30 days, they're going to charge you way more per month. That's not good. What you want to do is use the 30-day trial to practice with and then hopefully go to your accountant or set up a file using the lowest monthly charge possible when you actually buy the software is going to be the general idea. So make sure that you're in compliance and whatnot to use the 30-day trial, but also make sure that you're not getting sucked into being forced to purchase the 30-day trial at possibly a higher monthly fee if you're not understanding exactly how the process is going to work. All right, so then the free student version, So again, you can look up, the best way to look up the student version to me usually is simply to type in, free student version and then look at the resources. If you're at, say, a qualified institution, you might be able to get access to that, which might give you longer than, say, 30 days to practice with a file. Now, the test drive is the Craig's Design and Landscaping. The easiest way to find this resource is to basically just type it into the browser. I'll show you this shortly, so we'll get back to these shortly. And then if you want to buy the software, then of course you want to ask possibly, again, your CPA firm, your accountant. They might have some options because QuickBooks is a quite widely used software. So if you're dealing with anybody that deals with accounting, tax preparers, bookkeepers, and CPA firms, possibly have some idea at least what's going on with the pricing structure and so on with QuickBooks, or possibly you can purchase it through them, hopefully getting the lowest price possible on a monthly basis. Okay, so now I'm just jumping online here so I could just see this a little bit more detail. So this is Intuit.com. Now, Intuit is the owner of QuickBooks. When I go to their website, I like to go to Intuit.com, even though Intuit owns multiple different softwares. But usually they have this bit at the top, which can then take me into QuickBooks. So that means it helps me to know where I'm at. You could type in just QuickBooks.com, but like I said, that to me, I like to start at the Intuit. And then when I'm in QuickBooks, I like to go to the very bottom of the page. Notice what it has here is it's trying to sell you the QuickBooks right here, but it doesn't have the toggle for the free 30-day trial here. And QuickBooks has multiple QuickBooks products. So it's still a little confusing as to whether we're talking about QuickBooks Desktop or QuickBooks Online. What kind of QuickBooks are we talking about? Now, normally, they're going to be selling QuickBooks Online these days because that's their default that they would like to sell at least to small to mid-sized businesses, and then larger businesses possibly still might use the desktop version for the enterprise version. But I like to go all the way to the bottom just to make sure I know where I'm at, because the bottom of the page has been the same for some time, listing out the products. So this has been down here, hasn't changed for years basically. And then I can say, okay, I'm going to make sure that I'm looking for QuickBooks Online, go to QuickBooks Online here. And then when I scroll down, now that toggle is appearing. If you do not see that toggle appearing, then go to the bottom of the page, look for it that way. Or if you still don't see it, maybe they hid it in the website somewhere. They haven't hid it for years. It's always been, you could find it this way. But if they do change it, then maybe you could just do a simple search, like a Google search for QuickBooks Online free 30-day trial. And you can usually find it that way if you can't find it this way. Now, remember, if I look at this, notice the prices down here. If I toggle to the right, it changes the prices. That's scary but we're not buying it. We're trying to get a free 30-day trial so we can practice with it. When we buy it, we want to possibly talk to our, like I say, our CPA firm and whatnot, or our accountant or bookkeeper to hope to get the best deal on it. So then you could choose the plan. We're usually going to use the Plus plan in our sample company file because we want to use the inventory and practice the inventory. In practice, if you don't have inventory, maybe you can get away with the essentials or possibly even the simple start. But again, we've covered that. We've talked about that in prior courses or sections. So I don't want to get into that in too much detail. We're going to be practicing on this one because it has the inventory, and then the advanced is usually like the specialty needs. We'll talk more about that later. But that's where the free 30-day trial is. You have to toggle this over to get the free 30-day trial. When you choose it, it's then going to, again, kind of scare you with the prices. I'm going to continue without payroll. Payroll is usually another add-on type of feature, so we can continue without payroll unless you can get a trial period for the payroll. And then you've got your information where if you have an account, you can log in. You might still be able to access the 30-day trial even without like a different account, because it's a different company file. So you might still have access to it. Or if you don't have any account set up, you'd have to set up, say, possibly a QuickBooks account. You can also try if you have an accountant's version versus not an accountant's version. I don't want to get into that right now, but that's going to be the general idea. So then if I go to the other thing you can do is look for the student file version, which I just basically typed into the browser find me QuickBooks Online student, and you should be able to find some information about that. Find out how to register an active 5-month. So it's a 5-month student trial version. This is the desktop version. So we would like to have the online. I think they have an online one as well. But in any case, you can search for the student version, which would be a similar thing. It's just that you might get a longer time period, which would be great. And then this is the desktop. The easiest way to look for the QuickBooks test drive, which is the sample company file that already has stuff in it and is available to everybody, is to search for the QuickBooks Online test drive. And then usually you're going to look for something that has intuit.com in the URL. Here's the test drive. For me, I would choose the United States version of it, and then verify that I'm not a robot if they ask me about that. And the test drive file is a sample company, Craig's Design and Landscaping. Now, the thing that's a little wonky, a little weird with this test drive is that you're not signed in. Like, I didn't have to sign in to get into the test drive, which I think that means that Intuit basically sees me as being signed in using my browser as the sample company sign in or log in. The problem with that is maybe I want to be in my company file or my practice company file that I've set up with a free 30-day trial or something like that as I'm practicing it, and be logged into the sample company file. That could be a problem if you're in the same browser and you need 2 separate logins. So if you're in, for example, your own company file that you logged in with your credentials, and you want to log into this file, the sample file, you might open a different browser or use the incognito window, selecting the drop down here, go into, say, incognito. This is how you would do it I'm in Google Chrome. Most browsers like Edge and whatnot have an incognito window. And because there's no cookies here, I should be able to open the sample company file here, even as I have another company file over here open. That's going to be the idea. So that's just something to kind of keep in mind. Remember that this company file, because it's a sample company file, will basically refresh every time you log out of it and go back into it. That means this company file is not ideal for long practice problems, because I can't enter a series of information that won't be deleted. That's a problem, number one. And number two, I can't enter the beginning information because it already has data in it, right? I can't lay down. So if I go to the reports, for example, and I open the balance sheet, we've already got a balance sheet, which means that the foundation has already been laid, meaning we already have the chart of accounts. We already have the products and services set up. So I can't really practice those things here. It's already done. So this company file is great for navigation, if I want to practice navigation or data input in a system that has already been set up. But if I want to practice setting up the system, that's when I need the new company file. So in our long practice problem, if you want to follow along with the setup process, setting up a new company file, entering the chart of accounts, entering the products and services from scratch, and entering beginning balances as though they're from a prior accounting system, at least that part of the practice problem, if you want to actually do the data input, you're going to need a sandbox that isn't this sandbox. You're going to need a new company file with nothing in it. Now, when you get to the later part of the practice problem, when we enter bills, invoices, and so on, then possibly you can get away with at least following along by going to this company file. You will not have the same information. We won't be selling the same things and whatnot, but you can get an idea of data input mirroring like an invoice. You can enter an invoice here that will mirror the invoice that we are entering. So bottom line, the best way to go through the practice problem is start to finish, making sure that you have enough time to practice a sufficient amount a day so that you can get through it in 30 days if you have 30 days in order to practice. However, if you've already gone through the practice problem and or you just want to use it as a reference tool, then the first part of the practice problem, you would really like to have enough time to get through that part But the second part of the practice problem, you might be able to get away with basically kind of following along with the similar type of actions with a file that's already set up, like the Craig's Design and Landscaping. It just won't have the sequential data in it. And you won't be able to do things like bank reconciliations in this company file because it's not going to have the same kind of data when we use an actual mock bank statement. All right, so that's the general idea. We'll dive more into it in future presentations.